Greetings, all you thirsty men of culture out there. Are you sick and tired of your protagonists being ditherers that won't accept the girls, even though they so badly want them? Harem after harem after harem where nothing ever happens? Well, do I have a show for you and a protagonist you're gonna like. Meet Meikyuu, one of the few and rare cases of a protagonist that when they have the opportunity to go at it, they're gonna go at it. And don't worry, despite the title that the West decided to get rid of because of obvious reasons, these girls are willing. And they're wanting. Well, there's just one girl for most of the time, but there's another girl later. Yes, that's right, Harem in the Labyrinth of Another World, the most misleading title in the history of anime because it's mostly not a harem, but that's not the point. This is a 12-episode series that unfortunately streamed in the West on Crunchyroll, and thus it was extremely censored. But we all know we all watched the other version. This is my review on the series that aired in the summer 2022 anime season, so let's jump right into it. Harem in the Labyrinth of Another World opens up with a guy named Meikyuu who is messing around on his computer, and at some point he's given a prompt. One last warning that if he proceeded, there was no turning back. And sure enough, he's transported to another world where he's given some unique abilities, plus some unique starting gear, before he heads out into this world. Quickly, the area is attacked by bandits. He kind of helps them out by taking out the bandits, and eventually he takes them to this other city where he finds out that one of the more interesting elements of this world is that, yes, obviously, being in the time setting it is, he discovers that there is, yes, forced servitude in this world, but additionally, forced servitude with benefits. So after Meikyuu goes into one of these facilities and he sits down with this guy named Alan, who is one of these forced servitude traders, he ends up meeting one such possible buy, which is Roxanne. And Meikyuu quickly sets her as his destination, trying to figure out the world that he's in, which is very video game-esque, trying to figure out the best way to make as much money as possible so that he doesn't miss the deadline and misses out on his opportunity to buy Roxanne. Which, soft spoilers, he will eventually buy her. At which point it kind of turned into this back and forth. Meikyuu going to dungeons, learning new skills, learning about the mechanics of the world itself and the abilities that he has, discovering that he has this unique skill that allows him to change his jobs and his skills around, but additionally, those that are in his party, including Roxanne. Additionally, you do get a sense that Meikyuu sort of didn't like the life that he was in before. And this is sort of his new way of life, his new chance at life. And yes, technically having Roxanne at his side has really improved that a lot. This new future and this new world is something that he's honestly enjoying. But additionally, he also has conflicts here and there about his own mortality, plus additionally the mortality of those around him. But let's be perfectly honest, it's all about him getting as many harem members as possible, buying up lots of girls, and enjoying his time in his new life. So my thoughts on Harem in the Labyrinth of Another World. As I kind of joked about at the very beginning, I was very disappointed about how un-harem this Harem in the Labyrinth of Another World was. I was kind of sold on this idea, and it sort of shows you in one of the earlier episodes, this idea that eventually he would have this big, huge harem of girls that were all around him. And yes, the quirk about this particular world is that, yes, he's technically buying the girls, not necessarily that he's acquiring their love and they're chasing him around. But like I said before, it sort of goes out of its way to point out that each one of them is kind of acceptant of it. And plus the idea that he treats them so well, it makes it a little bit more easier to stomach as well. No, I'm not here to say that forced servitude and forcing women is a good thing. It's just what this world is, and that's kind of the idea that it's going with. But taking a step back, yes, I was a little bit disappointed in the idea that most of this show, of this one season, has been just him with Roxanne. And I felt that over time, it got really boring. I think one of the issues that this series struggles with is that its chemistry's not really there. How much chemistry can you have between Meikyuu and Roxanne when Roxanne technically is supposed to do whatever he wants her to do? It's just nothing but him kind of stringing along this girl that's obviously going to be very timid and accept whatever he says. Although there's times where she does kind of step out of line and he allows it because he does technically want her to think for herself. But unfortunately, it wasn't until around the 11th episode that we finally got some injection of some chemistry. We finally got to see how these characters can react when there's more than just the two of them. And I felt like that was what I was looking for when I first came into the show. A harem where the main protagonist isn't always going, oh no, big mounds, can't touch. Meikyuu isn't your typical main character. He's not afraid of mounds. He's not afraid of anything the girls can offer him. And he's willing to go for it, and that's kind of refreshing. It's a little bit more adult a little more easier to stomach than your typical, I don't know, for example, this season, Vermilion Gold, where it's like, oh no! Which, yes, does technically get me into my huge warning for this entire series is don't watch it on Crunchyroll because you're going to get the censored version of it. There's 3 total versions of this show. And yes, if you want to get the best experience, you have to go with the full uncensored version. The other 2 versions are just, I guess if you like error messages on your screen blocking half of what's happening and you can't hear what's happening. I will admit that I did enjoy a lot of other aspects of the show besides the harem. It sort of goes for a gamification of the world that he's in. So yes, it's a fantasy world setting. Yes, there's magic and swords and dungeons, but it's sort of like the people in the world itself are kind of like NPCs where they don't know that there's menus, they don't know that there's skills and stuff like that. They acknowledge the existence of such things, it's just they can't see it the same way that Meikyuu sees. He sees menus, he sees job listings, where somebody in the world just knows that there is a blacksmith skill. They just know that people apply to become magicians. But Meikyuu can see it. So when he asks Roxanne if she can possibly become a monk, she doesn't understand it. No, there's people that become monks. I'm a beast warrior. So it's confusing to her when Meikyuu and her actually acquire the skill. And it's sort of the same aspect of when they get into talking about weapons themselves with skill slots, and this idea that there's an understanding that there's skill slots available and there's empty skill slots because yes, technically blacksmiths can apply skill crystals to weapons. And the assumption is that if it can't apply, then there's no skill slot. So it's, like I said, it's sort of making the gamified aspect of it in a reality of this world, but then nobody but Meikyuu can really understand it fully. Everybody of the world itself just accepts them as sort of rules of the world that they can't control. But Meikyuu can control it, and Meikyuu can see it, thus know how to manipulate it. At the same time, I really did feel like a lot of the show didn't really explain a lot of those mechanics. For the longest time, I didn't even know that Meikyuu can change his job. I assume he can. And honestly, a lot of people's enjoyment of the show is going to be around if you enjoy that idea. If you enjoy the idea that Meikyuu goes in the dungeon, he tries out different things, trial and error with a lot of skills and abilities and formations with Roxanne. Because yes, technically, it's like a 75-25. 75 is messing with skills and going to dungeons, and the other 25 is doing naughty things with Roxanne. Which gets me to my previous point, where this show kind of got boring after a while because the chemistry between Meikyuu and Roxanne was just going nowhere, and their interactions between each other was just kind of boring at some point. The only thing that was kind of dragging me along was to see if Meikyuu would experiment with his abilities and what he's able to do in this world. It works sometimes, and other times it's just boring. It all kind of comes down to this idea, which honestly most people are probably going to point out for this series, is it just a glorified hentai? And I honestly believe it is. It's really good animation hentai. Granted, it doesn't show as much as a hentai would, but it's sort of like a hentai mixed with an isekai with some gamification to it. And I think if you like those aspects, you're probably going to enjoy the show. It is definitely power fantasy wish fulfillment. It's really what it is. But thankfully with a main character that doesn't run around at the sight of any skin. Overall, I think it was an okay show. I enjoyed my time watching it. I felt like it was just getting good at the very end of it, which was the unfortunate thing. Like I said, once we get another character added to the show at the very end, it felt like the chemistry was finally doing something. I enjoyed the interactions between the characters. There was some back and forth, some pushing and pulling that really the series needed a long time ago. I'm still looking forward to the OVAs. I'll definitely be checking them out, but overall, yes, would I want another season of this? Sure, because like I said, it's just starting to get good in my opinion. Would I go out and check out the source material? No. With how drug out this series was to get to the point where we finally had a harem, and we finally had good chemistry, I have no doubts that it'll continue to drag on. But anyways, that's my review of Harem and the Labyrinth of Another World. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below, comment. Let me know what you thought of the series. Did you check it out? Are you going to be checking it out? Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, I'm doing reviews of all the shows of the summer season, as well as doing first impressions of the fall season when it comes around. So make sure you get all my content. You make sure to hit that subscribe button. Additionally, if you like my content, you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon link, a tips link, and a super thanks button down below. I greatly appreciate everybody that considers, and y'all take care.